Welcome back to Truth That Haunts. This is the place where we explore stories that stay with you long after the video ends, mysteries, legends, and real events that blur the line between the living and the dead. But before we begin tonight's story, I want to hear from you. Have you ever stayed somewhere that felt wrong? A hotel, a house, even a room where the energy was so heavy you couldn't explain it. Maybe the silence felt alive, or you sensed someone watching you even when no one was there. Share your experience in the comments. I'll be reading through them. And who knows, your story might even inspire a future episode. And if you're new here, or if you've been watching but haven't hit that button yet, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Truth That Haunts, and tap the bell icon. We post stories every week that will challenge what you believe and make you think twice before turning off the lights. Alright, take a deep breath because this one is going to stay with you. Let's get into it. The elevator doors slide open. A young woman in a red hoodie rushes inside, quickly pressing every button she can. Her hand darts across the panel with nervous urgency, as if she's trying to summon help or escape. But something is wrong. The elevator doors don't close. They remain open, almost mocking her panic. She leans forward, peeking her head out, glancing left, then right. Her movements are jerky, frantic, unnatural. She hides in the corner, then steps out again, her arms moving in strange, almost mechanical gestures, like she's warding something off. Then she steps out completely, and just like that, she vanishes. This grainy security footage would go on to terrify millions around the world. Uploaded by the Los Angeles Police Department during a missing persons investigation, the video spread across YouTube like wildfire. To this day, it remains one of the most infamous and unsettling clips ever recorded. The young woman was Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old Canadian student, bright, curious, and full of life. But just days after she was captured on that security camera, her body was found in one of the most shocking and mysterious locations imaginable, a rooftop water tank at Los Angeles. This infamous Cecil Hotel. This is her story. A story of a girl who checked into a hotel with a haunted history and never checked out. A story that continues to haunt investigators, paranormal enthusiasts, and millions of strangers on the internet to this very day. Before we explore the mystery surrounding her disappearance, we have to understand who Elisa Lam was. Born in Vancouver, Canada, Elisa was the daughter of immigrants from Hong Kong. She was a bright student with dreams of seeing the world, but like many young people, she also struggled. Elisa had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She took several medications, and she often shared her thoughts and struggles openly on her Tumblr blog, Nouvelle Nouveau. Her blog was filled with posts about fashion, literature, travel dreams, and deeply personal reflections. Sometimes her words were lighthearted and funny. Other times, they revealed the weight of her mental health battles. In late January 2013, Elisa decided to take a solo trip along the west coast of the United States. She wanted to experience independence, meet new people, and explore big cities. After visiting San Diego, she arrived in Los Angeles on January 26th. She checked into the Cecil Hotel, a budget location near Skid Row, known for attracting travelers, backpackers, and unfortunately, trouble. To understand why Elisa's case became such a phenomenon, you have to understand the place she stayed. The Cecil Hotel was built in the 1920s as a luxurious destination for business travelers. But as the Great Depression hit, downtown Los Angeles declined. The once grand hotel became a low-budget haven for the desperate, the transient, and the dangerous. Over the decades, the Cecil became infamous. Suicides were shockingly common there. Guests jumped from windows. Others died under mysterious circumstances in their rooms. Some locals even nicknamed it the Suicide Hotel. But the hotel's reputation grew even darker when it became a temporary home for serial killers. Richard Ramirez, better known as the Night Stalker, lived at the Cecil in the 1980s while he terrorized Los Angeles with his brutal murders. Later, another killer, Jack Unterweger, stayed there in the 1990s, strangling sex workers during his stay. By the time Elisa checked in, the Cecil had been rebranded as Stay on Main in an effort to shake off its sinister history. But locals knew its reputation, and travelers often reported strange feelings, eerie noises, and unexplained occurrences inside its walls. It was the kind of place where urban legends are born, and Elisa Lam was about to become part of its story forever. In the days after checking in, Elisa did many of the things any young traveler would do. She visited bookstores, she shopped. She called her parents daily to check in, but there were also troubling signs. Other hotel guests reported Elisa behaving erratically. At one point, she was even moved from a shared hostel-style room to a private one because her behavior unsettled her roommates. On January 31st, Elisa called her parents in Vancouver. She was supposed to check out of the Cecil that day, but when she failed to contact them again, which was unusual for her parents grew worried and called the Los Angeles Police Department to report her missing. At first, police conducted a search of the hotel. They brought in dogs, they checked the lobby, hallways, and even the roof. But they found no sign of Elisa. It was as if she had vanished. Days turned into weeks, and concern grew. Posters with Elisa's face appeared around Los Angeles. Social media began sharing her story. And then came the turning point. Police released the elevator surveillance video. At just over 2 minutes long, the video is simple, but it's one of the most disturbing pieces of footage ever seen on the internet. Elisa presses multiple buttons. The elevator doors refuse to close. She peeks out cautiously, then hides, then emerges again. Her hands make strange, twisting motions as if she's talking to someone or something invisible. At one point, she steps fully out of the elevator. The doors close briefly, then open again, but Elisa never returns. The video raised more questions than it answered. Was she playing a bizarre game? Was someone just out of sight? Why didn't the elevator function normally? And why did her gestures look so unnatural? Almost inhuman? Within days, the video racked up millions of views. Theories exploded online: possession, psychosis, stalking, even supernatural interference. It was the kind of viral mystery the internet thrives on. But behind all the speculation, there was still one tragic fact: Elisa Lam was missing. As police searched for Elisa, guests at the Cecil began to notice something strange. The water in their rooms looked dark. The pressure was weak. Some complained that it tasted odd. One guest said the water from the sink ran black for a few seconds before clearing. Others reported that the showers smelled strange. Some claimed the water even had a foul taste. Hotel staff investigated, and what they found would shock the world. On February 19th, 2013, nearly 3 weeks after, Elisa disappeared. Maintenance workers climbed to the roof to inspect the water tanks. These giant metal cylinders supplied the building's plumbing. Inside one of them, floating face up in the water, was the body of Elisa Lam. The discovery was horrifying. Not only had a missing young woman been found dead, but for nearly 3 weeks, guests had been drinking, showering, and brushing their teeth with water that her body had been decomposing in. News spread quickly, and the story transformed from a local missing persons case into an international sensation. But the discovery only deepened the mystery. How did Elisa get onto the roof? How did she climb into the heavy water tank, and why? The elevator video, the locked doors, the strange behavior, the hotel's haunted history, all of it combined into one of the most enduring mysteries of the 21st century. And this was only the beginning. When investigators discovered Elisa Lam's body inside the rooftop water tank, the world was horrified. But for longtime Los Angeles locals, there was an unsettling familiarity about the location, because the building she vanished inside, the Cecil Hotel, was already infamous. For nearly a century, it had carried a reputation for misery, violence, and tragedy. To many, Elisa Lam wasn't the first victim of the Cecil, and she might not be the last. The Cecil Hotel first opened its doors in 1927, built during a booming era for Los Angeles. It was designed as a glamorous destination, complete with marble floors, stained glass, and elegant details. The developers imagined traveling businessmen, wealthy tourists, and Hollywood's rising elite walking its halls. But within just a few years, the Great Depression arrived. Downtown Los Angeles changed. The neighborhood that once promised prosperity became filled with poverty, crime, and eventually, the sprawling homeless population of Skid Row. The Cecil's gleaming reputation faded. As time passed, it became less a hub for travelers and more a low-budget stopover. And with that shift came a new clientele, those who were desperate, struggling, or in danger. Almost as soon as the Cecil's fortunes declined, tragedy began to mark its history. The first widely reported incident came in 1931, when a man named W.K. Norton checked into the hotel under a false name. Days later, he was found dead in his room, having ingested poison capsules. It would not be the last. Throughout the 1930s and 40s, suicides at the Cecil became disturbingly common. Guests threw themselves from upper floors, leapt from balconies, and overdosed on pills. In 1937, a guest named Grace Magro fell from a ninth-story window. Her body caught in telephone wires before hitting the ground. In 1938, Roy Thompson jumped from the roof, landing on a skylight across the street. In 1962, a woman named Pauline Otten argued with her husband in a ninth-floor room, then threw herself from the window. Tragically, she landed on a pedestrian below, killing them both instantly. The frequency of suicides gave the Cecil a grim nickname, the Suicide Hotel. Newspapers noted the disturbing trend, cementing the building's dark reputation. But suicide wasn't the only shadow haunting the Cecil. While despair drove many guests to take their own lives, others fell victim to outright violence. One of the most infamous murders at the Cecil occurred in 1964, when a retired telephone operator known affectionately as Pigeon Goldie, a nickname she earned for her habit of feeding birds in a nearby park, was found dead in her ransacked room. She had been beaten, stabbed, and raped. Though a man was arrested, he was eventually released, and the crime remains unsolved to this day. Earlier in 1944, a tragedy both bizarre and horrific occurred. A young woman named Dorothy Zhang Purcell gave birth unexpectedly in her room. Believing the baby was stillborn, she panicked and threw the infant out of the window, where it landed on the roof of a nearby building. Later reports suggested the baby may have still been alive when it was discarded. Dorothy was arrested, but eventually deemed insane. Layer upon layer of these stories stacked up until the Cecil was no longer just a hotel. It was a symbol of death. If suicides and murders weren't enough, the Cecil also became a temporary home for two notorious serial killers. In the mid-1980s, Richard Ramirez, better known as the Night Stalker, lived at the Cecil during part of his murderous rampage across Los Angeles. Ramirez was a Satanist who terrorized the city with break-ins, rapes, and murders, leaving victims brutalized in their homes. After a night of killing, Ramirez would return to his low-budget room at the Cecil. Residents recalled him sometimes walking through the halls shirtless, with blood-stained clothing. But at a place like the Cecil, no one else questions. A few years later, in 1991, Austrian serial killer Jack Unterweger also stayed at the hotel while working as a journalist. He was in Los Angeles supposedly to report on crime, but instead he was murdering sex workers in his spare time. He would strangle his victims with their own brass, echoing the killings he had committed back in Europe. Once again, the Cecil was the backdrop for violence, two killers. 2 different decades, both choosing the same building as their base of operations. With such a disturbing legacy, it's no wonder the Cecil also developed a reputation for being haunted. Guests claimed to hear unexplained footsteps in empty hallways. Doors slammed shut without warning. Elevators malfunctioned. People reported seeing shadowy figures standing at the ends of long corridors. Others felt cold hands touch them in the night. Some visitors described overwhelming feelings of dread and depression while staying there, as if the very walls were soaked with despair. Paranormal investigators have suggested that the sheer number of violent deaths concentrated in one location created a spiritual vortex, a place where restless energy lingered and drew in more tragedy. The Cecil became a regular feature on ghost tours, its legend retold as part of Los Angeles' darker side. When Elisa Lam arrived in Los Angeles in January 2013, she checked into this very building. But though the hotel had tried to shed its sinister name by rebranding as Stay on Main, the reputation remained. Elisa was a 21-year-old traveler, bright, optimistic, and vulnerable. She had no idea, or perhaps only a vague awareness, of the history of the building she had chosen. But she was walking into a place layered with decades of despair. Some argue that Elisa's strange behavior in the elevator video can't be understood without acknowledging the hotel's legacy. If you believe in curses, hauntings, or the idea of places absorbing energy, the Cecil was the worst possible place for someone already struggling with mental health to stay. Skeptics argue that the Cecil's reputation is simply the product of statistics. A cheap hotel in a dangerous neighborhood will naturally attract tragedy. Drug users, criminals, and those on the brink of despair are more likely to stay there. But believers see a pattern that feels too strong to ignore. Too many deaths, too many strange coincidences, too many legends clustered in one place. To them, Elisa Lam wasn't just a random victim. She was another casualty of a building that seemed hungry for souls. Whatever you believe, there is no denying one thing. The Cecil Hotel has a darkness that is hard to explain. Even its architecture feels unsettling, endless hallways, dim lighting, peeling wallpaper, and elevators that seem reluctant to close. For decades, it's been more than just a hotel. It's been a stage for tragedy, and in January 2013, Elisa Lam became the star of its darkest performance yet. Her disappearance wasn't the first mystery in the Cecil, and it likely won't be the last. But it was the one that captured the entire world. Because unlike all those stories buried in old newspaper clippings, Elisa's was caught on camera. And that haunting elevator footage ensured that the Cecil Hotel's legacy would live on forever. When Elisa Lam checked into the Cecil Hotel on January 26, 2013, no one could have guessed her stay would turn into one of the most chilling mysteries of the decade. She was a 21-year-old student from Vancouver, Canada, traveling alone through the West Coast. Her parents, immigrants from Hong Kong, worried about her traveling solo, but Elisa had promised to keep in close contact. Every day, she called home or emailed them, reassuring her family that everything was fine. For the first few days, it was. She visited the city, went shopping, explored bookstores, and documented her journey online. Elisa wasn't just a traveler, she was also a writer at heart. On her Tumblr blog, Nouvelle Nouveau, she chronicled her thoughts with raw honesty. She wrote about fashion and music, but also her mental health struggles, her bipolar disorder, and her feelings of loneliness. To her online followers, Elisa was thoughtful, funny, and sometimes melancholic, but always relatable. The Cecil Hotel was marketed under a new name, Stay on Main, to attract young travelers like Elisa. It had a hostel-style setup where some guests shared rooms. Elisa was placed with several other young women, but according to reports, things quickly became tense. Elisa's roommates complained about her strange behavior, hiding notes on their beds, locking doors, and acting in ways they found unsettling. Eventually, hotel staff moved her into a private room. It's unclear exactly what Eliza was experiencing during these days. Some speculate her bipolar disorder may have been affecting her behavior, while others believe something about the hotel itself was influencing her state of mind. On January 31st, Eliza visited a bookstore called The Last Bookstore, a quirky, artistic shop popular with tourists. She spoke with the owner, who later described her as lively and excited about buying books to bring back to her family. There was no sign that anything was seriously wrong. That same day, she called her parents in Vancouver, as she always did. But this time, it was the last call they would ever receive from her. When Eliza failed to check out of the hotel the next day, her parents grew concerned. They contacted the LAPD and flew to Los Angeles to help search for their daughter. Police arrived quickly at the Cecil. At first, they searched Elisa's room and personal belongings. They found her laptop, medications, and luggage, but no sign of her. Then they expanded the search. Cadaver dogs were brought in to sniff through the hotel hallways, the lobby, and even the rooftop. But nothing turned up. The dogs didn't detect her scent near the roof access points. It was as if Eliza had simply disappeared into thin air. With few leads, the LAPD made a decision that would change everything. They released a video clip from the hotel's surveillance system. The footage, recorded on February 1st, showed Eliza in one of the Cecil's elevators. What should have been a mundane clip instantly became one of the most chilling videos in internet history. In it, Eliza presses multiple floor buttons. She peeks out of the elevator, then hides in the corner as if someone is following her. The doors fail to close. She steps out, back in, and out again. At one point, she makes strange, contorted gestures with her hands, twisting her fingers in unnatural shapes. Finally, she steps out of the elevator entirely. The doors close, and she is never seen again. The video was released on February 13th, 2013. Within hours, it went viral. Millions of viewers dissected every frame. Why didn't the doors close? Who was Eliza speaking to? Was she hiding from someone just out of frame? Or was something else entirely happening in that hallway? The internet became consumed with theories. Forums, YouTube channels, and blogs analyzed the video endlessly. Some argued Eliza was playing a strange game, like the so-called elevator game, rumored to summon spirits. Others believed she was hallucinating from her medication in the middle of a mental health crisis. Still others insisted someone was manipulating the camera, that parts of the footage were slowed down or edited. People slowed the footage frame by frame, trying to detect shadows, hidden figures, or signs of foul play. For many viewers, the video felt too unsettling to be explained away by rational means. And while the world obsessed over the footage, Eliza's family was still desperately searching for answers. Meanwhile, the Cecil's guests began to notice something strange. The water pressure in their rooms was weak. Some complained of dark, murky water flowing from the taps. Others said the water had a strange odor and even a foul taste. A British couple staying at the hotel described brushing their teeth and showering in the discolored water, horrified when they later learned the truth. These complaints grew louder until hotel staff were dispatched to check the rooftop water tanks. On February 19th, a maintenance worker named Santiago Lopez climbed the ladder to the roof. He made his way to the massive cylindrical water tanks that supplied the hotel's plumbing. When he looked inside one of them, he made a chilling discovery: the body of a young woman floating face up in the water. It was Elisa Lam. She had been missing for nearly 3 weeks. And during that time, hundreds of hotel guests had been drinking, showering, and brushing their teeth with water contaminated by her decomposing body. The discovery shocked not only the hotel guests, but the world. News outlets swarmed the Cecil. Reporters demanded to know, how had she gotten into the tank? Why hadn't the rooftop search turned her up earlier? And most of all, what had happened in those final moments after she stepped out of the elevator? The rooftop was supposed to be secure. Access doors were locked and alarmed. The tanks themselves were difficult to climb, with heavy lids that required strength to move. Elisa was only 21, small in stature, and reportedly had not left any trace of climbing equipment. Theories exploded again. Some insisted she must have been murdered and placed in the tank. Others argued she climbed in herself during a psychotic episode. Paranormal enthusiasts claimed she had been lured by some unseen force that haunted the hotel. The discovery solved the question of where Elisa Lam was, but it left behind even bigger mysteries about how and why she ended up in one of the most inaccessible places in the hotel. The internet had never seen anything like it. A real-life disappearance captured partly on camera, ending in a horrifying discovery that felt like the climax of a horror movie. Only this wasn't fiction, it was real. And the story was only growing darker. On February 19th, 2013, nearly 3 weeks after Elisa Lam vanished, maintenance worker Santiago Lopez climbed onto the Cecil Hotel's roof to investigate the water complaints. What he found inside one of the giant water tanks would shock the world. There, floating in the murky water, was the body of Elisa Lam, naked, her clothes floating nearby, her watch and room key sinking in the water below. The gruesome discovery instantly raised more questions than answers. How had she gotten inside? The rooftop was supposed to be locked and alarmed. The tanks themselves were difficult to reach, requiring a ladder and enough strength to lift their heavy lids. Investigators were baffled. An autopsy later concluded Elisa had drowned. There were no signs of trauma, sexual assault, or foul play. Toxicology reports showed traces of her prescribed medications, but not at the levels expected if she had been taking them consistently. To the coroner, the case was simple: a tragic accident, likely linked to Elisa's mental health struggles and possible disorientation from skipping medication. But to the public, nothing about it felt simple. If Elisa had a mental health crisis, how did she bypass the locked doors and rooftop alarms? Why did the elevator behave so strangely in the infamous video? Why was she naked in the water? Did she undress herself, or had her clothes been removed after? And why didn't search dogs detect her scent on the roof earlier? Every answer only seemed to spark more mystery. For some, Elisa's death was a tragic mental health episode. For others, it was a case of foul play. Perhaps someone at the hotel knew more than they admitted. And then there were those who believed the Cecil itself, steeped in decades of death, had claimed another victim through supernatural means. Theories ranged from government cover-ups to dark rituals to the infamous elevator game, a rumored urban legend where pressing buttons in a certain sequence opens a portal to another dimension. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: the Cecil Hotel's legend had grown darker, and Elisa Lam's story was now part of its haunted legacy. The death of Elisa Lam remains one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries of our time. Was it a tragic accident brought on by her struggles with mental illness? Was it foul play that authorities failed to uncover? Or was it something stranger? Something tied to the darkness that has clung to the Cecil Hotel for nearly a century? The elevator video continues to disturb millions. Her final moments, forever frozen in grainy surveillance footage, raise questions that may never be answered. And perhaps that's why her story endures. Because it leaves us with a chilling realization: sometimes the scariest stories aren't the ones we invent, they're the ones that really happened. If the story unsettled you, you're not alone. The case of Elisa Lam still sparks debate, fear, and fascination around the world. What do you think happened that night? Accident, foul play, or something even darker? Drop your theory in the comments below. And if you want more chilling stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark, make sure to like this video. Subscribe to Truth That Haunts and hit the bell so you don't miss the next haunting mystery. Because sometimes the truth doesn't set us free. Sometimes the truth haunts.